Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. I'm your host today, Ken Tucker with Changescape Web, and I'm joined by Paul Barthel, also of Changescape Web, and Ian Cantle from Outsourced Marketing. And Jen is going to be joining us as JenBot today virtually. So we're going to have her jump in and answer some questions as well. Um, Super excited about this topic. I absolutely love this topic. It's something that we've been doing since before 2010. So for over a decade, we've been working with blogs, and that's what we're talking about today is blogging. We talk a lot about this, content and content marketing on the podcast. And one of the most powerful content marketing strategies has been and continues to be blogging. But the thing is, there are so many bad blog posts out there. They're typos. Uh, and sure, yeah, there are transcriptions that people get to put out there, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these are blog posts that were written by people that weren't spell checked, that weren't run through a tool like Grammarly. They're not unique content. They're thin content. There are so many problems. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how bad the world of blogging is in general out there for most small businesses. So what we want to do today is we want to give you ideas of how you can create blogs that work. So with that, I'm going to jump in and ask Paul the first question. Paul, let's start with why should a business start to do blogging and why it's so important, and also talk about some of the ways that the blogs help with search engine optimization.
Yeah, well, if you want to be found online, you have to have content. And although video content is increasing in popularity and getting more important, blogs are still the foundation of your content. And Google loves content. And whether it's fresh content or evergreen content, because that's how Google knows what your business is about. How is Google going to rank you for any kind of search terms if they don't know what you do, what your business is about? You can't just stick a website up there with a few things on the home page and walk away from it. You'll never get ranked. And this isn't 1950. People don't use yellow pages anymore. So
1950, huh?
well, but blog posts, they build traffic. All right. They You write blog posts. Again, I think we're going to get into this a little bit more later, but you write blog posts and it helps you rank in the search engines, and people read the blog posts. That can increase leads. It increases traffic because blog posts are usually, we talked about this thing called sales funnel, marketing funnel, and blog posts are a lot of times at the very top of that. It's an introduction to your business, and you should have blog posts for every stage of that funnel. I'm not going to get into that, but they increase leads, and people they build brand recognition, and they build trustworthiness and credibility, and it helps people say, okay, this business knows what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. I trust them, or at least I want to know more. And maybe they'll download a lead magnet or fill out a contact form. And it also increases time on page, which is a ranking factor in Google. It's called dwell time. And that's where internal linking comes in, which you link from one post to another, and it helps guide people through your website and through that sales funnel. And blog posts is how you rank for keywords. And every blog post is an opportunity to rank for several keywords and semantic keywords. I think we're probably going to get into that a little more later too. But this could almost be a podcast in itself, but they earn backlinks, because if you don't have any content, and backlinks are important, if you don't have any content for people to link to, then Google's going to wonder, it's going to hurt your authority. Google's not going to think that you're legitimate. So, like we could probably talk about this for, another hour or two, but you have to have blog posts and content in order to rank in the search engines. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, a couple of things that I want to add, and Ian, I think you and I addressed this when we wrote our content marketing for local search book, in that, it helps you round out and talk about the problems that you solve. It allows you to go out, and we've talked about this in the past as well, this concept of long tail keywords. Blogs are great for long tail keywords, which really help to provide the supporting cast to reinforce your primary keyword. So if you do interior house painting, if you've got a series of blogs that have long tail keywords that are closely associated with that, it just provides additional support. And then on top of that, internal linking within your own website, between pieces of content on your website, is a really missed SEO opportunity. And most people, when they write a blog, it's one and done. They never touch that blog again. They never go back and revisit it, and that's a missed opportunity. So, yeah, Paul, you're exactly right. I mean, blogs are usually the thing that fuels the content engine, and content engines typically are what you need if you're going to be trying to win in the SEO game.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing, there's a misconception out there. I see it a little bit less these days, maybe because it's become more commonplace to have business blogs, but it still pops up every once in a while. And it used to pop up a lot in talking with clients about SEO and content development, is that there's this misconception that blogs are personal. Because of the way they first started out, people would do a blog about their personal life journey, or a blog about their travel, or a blog about their dog, Fluffy or something. And so there is this misconception sometimes that a blog is not a valuable piece of the pie. But what our listeners need to understand is that the blog terminology is really just a website structural term that denotes you have pages and you have posts. And blog posts are these different types of pages on your website. But Google doesn't look at a blog post page as different from a primary page on your website. It's content. It will crawl that information. There are some additional things within a blog post that you can do that you can't do with a page. And so, I think that's an important thing, just so that if there's any listeners out there that are like, well, I'm not writing about my dog or my travels, so why would I put a blog post on my website? It's just another form of valuable content.
Yeah. Well, and we'll get into how do you come up with content, topics to write on and stuff like that. I think that's a question I wanted to ask you specifically, Ian. So I asked Jen to see if she knew of any good statistics that kind of provide some reinforcement, because you've heard from us say, hey, blogs, are really important. Here's what you can do with them, yada, yada, yada. Let's listen to Jen give us an answer on some key statistics that we need to consider and why blogs are so important.
So my question is, what are some of the stats that really jump out when it comes to blogging? So I've got a number here, and most of them have to do more with how blogging helps your customers or your potential customers, rather than what it does for the writer. So with that, I've found 6 here. Okay, the first one said, B2B companies using blogs see 67% more leads than those without blogs. So that's huge. The next one is, and this is applicable for small and large businesses, because everybody is always concerned about their budget. Because it's so scalable and affordable, businesses know that blogging is the 3rd most common content marketing strategy. So like I said, whether you're solo, big, small, we all have the budget constraints, and blogging is pretty affordable. When it comes to the customer journey and folks landing on your website or checking out your company and trying to understand, is this a legit company? Do I trust them? Are they going to be able to answer my questions or solve my problems? There's 3 stats here that I found. 68.5, so let's call it 69% of consumers feel a blog adds to a website's credibility. 71% of B2B buyers will read content during the buyer journey. That's really key. The buyer journey being the fact that at one point in time, your potential customer does not know you exist. So they have to find out about you and then get to know, like, trust you. And then their journey to trying you out, buying from you, repeat buying, referring you, that is the whole thing that we refer to as the buyer's journey. So blogging, with this stat, 71% of B2B buyers will read content during the buyer journey, indicates that a huge percentage of people doing the research, trying to educate themselves on the product or the service, use blogs to do that. And not only with consumers in the B2B space. So typically in the business to business space, you're looking at typically, generally, higher budget, higher pricing, and you're probably also looking at multiple buyers, meaning that there is more than one decision maker. And if you think about it like that, there might be one person going out there to gather information or one person taking the lead on it. And that person, I think this is something that we forget often in a B2B sale. There is a lot of selling internally that the team has to do, or one person has to do to the committee. So the more that your blog or your content can help that person get the information and then go internally and be able to pitch it to them and disseminate it to them, that can be really helpful. Last one. So that was B2B. So 71% of B2B buyers will read content during the buyer journey. And for the consumer side, 60% of consumers say blog posts are valuable when in the early stages of the buying process, when they're researching, trying to find out what is there. So there's some great stats on blogs, and hopefully that drives home the point that your effort is worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the blogs that or the statistics on blogs that Jen picked really, back up what you were saying, both Ian and Paul, both. It's such an important thing. So, we just learned that, yeah, blogs are super important even for B2B type businesses. It's not just writing personal journals or, things like that, like you mentioned, Ian. So what, let's go to you. How in the world do you come up with topics for blogs? I think that's a lot of people get paralyzed by that. Do you have any good recommendations on that?
Yeah. I think I do. The first place I like to start is at the low budget options. So there's lots of tools you can get, and I'll go into those a little bit. But the first option that I think is often overlooked by not just businesses, but gosh darn it, marketers, is frequently asked questions. So the reason you should start with frequently asked questions is because people are asking you these questions, your prospects, your clients. And if they're asking you personally, which they're doing because you would know these frequently asked questions, you and your team, then chances are very high that they are searching for those online. And so if people are searching for content, it's gonna help you get found, and it's gonna help you build out content. So frequently asked questions, I think, is super, super low hanging fruit. There's also a term called should ask questions. These usually aren't quite as powerful from a search standpoint because people don't know to search for these. But you, as the expert in a field, can certainly think about, man, the questions prospects and customers or patients should be asking are these. These are the gold behind the easy questions. And so you can build out content related to that, and it's super valuable.
Well, it also helps with differentiation too, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why I put the should ask questions on the same page as the frequently asked questions.
Yeah. The frequently asked questions, I think, leads really well into my next favorite way of coming up with topics, and that's keyword research. You can find out what people are searching for in relation to your business by performing keyword research. And I would break keyword research down into what I would term simple keyword research, and I'll explain what that is, and complex keyword research, which is usually what marketers get involved in. But if you're a business owner and you want to take a stab at this yourself, start with the simple keyword research. Go to Google, open up your Google screen, type in one of your products or services. So as an example, for a dentist, type in, a really high yielding service is dental implants. So enter the term dental implants. Partway down the page, at the top, you'll see ads, then you'll see the map listings, but then you'll see something called People Also Ask. So Google is presenting to you the top questions that people ask related to this topic. And these are super powerful, and these will probably align with your frequently asked questions that you've already brainstormed. But these are really, really powerful. The really cool thing about this, so for example, like I did the dental implant search this morning just so I could share it with you. And Google shows people are also asking questions like, what are the 3 types of dental implants? How long do dental implants last? How much do dental implants cost? How painful are dental implants? And the really, really cool thing about this is if you click the chevron beside that question, Google will actually show you, here's a blurb from the top ranking blog post, and here's a link to it. So you can actually go to it and learn, this is what a top ranking blog post is saying in terms of this, how they answered this particular question. The really neat thing too is that as you unlock or open those chevrons and look into those areas, Google will continue to build out more and more questions below that. So it's a really neat way just to, there's no data attached to it as far as like, this is how many searches are done for this. So that's why I call it simple keyword research, but it's still really, really powerful and can help you find low-hanging fruit. On the complex keyword research side, this involves using tools like Ahrefs or Ubersuggest or Moz. My favorite is SEMrush. That's just where we've landed as a business. But you enter a seed keyword, meaning like a starter keyword. So in this case, dental implants, and it will show you a wealth of related keywords to that keyword. It'll show you the volume of searches. It'll show you the competitiveness. It'll show you how much cost per click if you were to spend on Google Ads. And it will show you questions that people are asking as well within that. So you can find great topics for blog posts this way because people are already searching for that content. And then there's other ways to find topics. You can go to forums and groups. So you can go to Quora or Reddit, excuse me, sites like Nextdoor, which are local, or Alignable, which is another local one, or Facebook groups. You can look for Facebook groups. If you're a dentist, go to a Facebook group for your community and see what people are asking about. You can also do competitor analysis. You can look at what your better ranking, and I would say close competitors. You don't want to go after like the big guys out there. You want to get to your closest competitor, find out what blog posts they've written, and see if you can't write a better blog post so that you'll move them down and you rise up. But those are the methods that I've found that work best. And that's frequently asked questions in the keyword research. One other framework I wanted to share, and this is in direct relation to topics. So what I just talked about really tells you what keywords you want to be including in your blog topic. We also talked about frequently asked questions and what questions people are asking online. But once you know a little bit about that, you can, there's a lot of terms for this, but it's really a content multiplier technique. And it's using, there's someone that coined it as the Lotus Blossom framework. But all you have to think about is you have your core keyword in the center, and then you build out around it 8 associated keywords or searches. And then out of those, you start to kick them out into more topics. And so you can create subtopics very quickly by doing this associative thinking brainstorming exercise. And what's really cool about taking that approach is that it will help you build out hub pages that basically create interlinking in your website on the same larger topic that was at the center of that Lotus Blossom, because everything should link back to that, all of these subtopics. So we found that works really well. Just having that, whether you use kind of that Lotus Blossom idea, or just go into it with the idea of the blog posts that we're creating, we want to have kind of these topic pillar columns, so that we can build out these larger, the larger framework of hub pages for our website that will give you much more SEO punch down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I know, Ian, you and I worked pretty closely together when we wrote our book. But once again, shameless plug, content marketing for local search. But in this book, we wanted to share ideas like this, because I know so many people, blogging is so critically important and so many people get stuck. One of the things that I found I do a lot is I like to harvest from stuff I've already done,
Yeah.
or from others. So writing a curated post, if you can go out there, do a little bit of research, find 5 to 10 great blog posts, write a summary. It needs to be unique content, but highlight, the key findings from, on a related topic. That's a great, easy way to write a blog post. And the other thing is, I surely am not alone in this, but a lot of times when I write an email response to a client question, even though it's not, maybe it doesn't start out as a frequently asked question, but it's like, I'll write it and it's like, my gosh, that's already, 500 plus words. I just need to take this and restructure it a little bit and turn it into a blog post. So harvesting emails that you send, if you do custom proposals, like if you're a home remodeling contractor, you can probably harvest a lot of great information and summarize that and turn it into a kick-ass blog post just by looking at some of the past proposals that you've done. So, reusability, it's got to all be unique content. There are ways to check that in the eyes of Google. It's critical. Business owners do not, in my opinion, most of the 99% of the time, you should not be paying for blog posts that aren't unique content. If you're doing that, I think you're wasting your money personally. Anyway, though, I'll get off that, off my soapbox.
Can I add one more thing? Just while you were talking and about repurposing content, one of the really powerful methods that you can use if you're a business that does any kind of presentations, lunch and learns, webinars, anything like that, if you record that, transcribe it, those things are so powerful, because if you take imagine a 30-minute webinar or a 30-minute presentation or an hour presentation, you've already created a topical structure to that, because you're presenting a big idea with supporting minor ideas. So you already have basically a structure for a hub page, because, and probably 10 blog posts you could write all around that one topic. So
yeah,
of course, you get it transcribed. You can have a writer or yourself build it out even more. But man, like we found that to be such a powerful way to do it. But there's investment involved in any of these things. And
transcribing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So, Paul, what are some of the key considerations when somebody's writing a blog post?
Well, it starts with planning. First, once you pick your topic, then you need to do some research and figure out what type of blog post you're going to write. So that there's how-to guides, there's list type blog posts, there's infographics, there's all kinds of different types of blog posts. And a good way to go about that is to research the topic on Google and look at the top results and see what type of blog posts they are. Because if it's a how-to blog post and you write a list type blog post, if the top ranking ones are how-to guides and you're writing a list type post, you're probably not going to rank. I mean, I'm not saying you can, I'm saying you probably won't. And speak to to the audience, know who you're writing for, and write it for that audience. I don't want to get too deep into that, but I think those are two of the biggest things. And, this kind of goes into probably another question you're going to ask me later is, write for people. Don't try to write for search engines, don't keyword stuff, but it really comes down to planning. Pick your topic, research your topic, know what type of blog posts rank, and look at the length of those blog posts. If the top ranking blog posts are 1,500 plus words and you write a 700 word blog post, again, you're probably not going to rank. And if it's something like a recipe and it's mostly pictures and the content is pretty much the recipe and maybe a little bit about it, and you write a 3,000 word recipe post, you're probably not going to rank. So pick your topic, research the type of blog posts that rank, and use that as a guide.
Yeah. I also, wanted to get your thoughts on the style of writing. Obviously, people don't typically read web content. They scan it. And so, structuring your blog post with the appropriate headings and titles, all of which have SEO consequences and benefits, using bullet points, short sentences, shorter paragraphs, because you want to make it easy for people to scan. Because typically what they're like, if you top 10 reasons you should be blogging, if you wrote that blog post, first of all, we probably need to improve that title a little bit. But second of all, when you're reading it, you're going to scan it and you're going to go, okay, got that. Oh, wait a minute, here's something I'm not doing. Now on item 3, you're going to dig in and you're actually going to read that, but you get to it by scanning first. And so I think it's really important for people to realize, writing on the web is a little bit different animal. You want to be very succinct and clear, absolutely. And as you said, you want to write for humans, Paul, but you always need to think about, you got to think like a publisher. Pretend you're a magazine or a newspaper article, or a newspaper, I should say. What makes articles appealing for people to read? And you want to factor that in, using images, keeping the flow going. I asked Jen, because Paul, you kind of started on this a little bit, but I asked Jen to kind of talk about the types of blog posts that typically, I'm not going to say, I asked her about viral, but it's not necessarily even viral. It's just what types of blog posts tend to perform better.
So the type of blog posts that tend to go viral, I got to be careful with that word, because people tend to think that viral means ultimately, if we write this or if we do this, 10 million people will see it. So I'm going to be careful with that word viral. But the top 5 types of posts that say get the most traffic or are going to have the chance to go viral, let's just couch it with that. First one are how-to posts. So how to actually do something, step-by-step, checklist, that kind of thing. The second is listicles. So a list. So the top 10, the top 5, the top 27, whatever it is in your subject area. So that's the second one. And think about that too. It's very easy for someone to scan and to see, who's the top 10 or who's the bottom, or if they're searching in their own industry, did we make the list? So lists help as well. And not just a list of a name or a list of a product, but 2 or 3 sentences at least after it to explain it a little bit more will be helpful to the reader. The next one would be controversial posts. Now, if you're going to say something controversial about your industry, about a competitor, you have to brace yourself for both the positive and the negative attention that's going to bring. So use controversial posts with, a grain of salt. Just be ready for it to go the wrong way if you're going to dip your toe in that kind of water. Next one are resource posts. So this would be information. This is a little bit different than a how-to, like how to do something. This is a type of post that gives a wide variety of information on a topic, and typically includes many links out to other resources that the reader can then follow up on and dig deeper into that topic. Last one would be case studies. And when we say case studies, not just, oh, we had this company, this is what we did, here's the results, but really meaty case studies that really allow you to explain the problem, explain some of the challenges, explain some of the problems that came up as you were trying to solve for this problem, and then what eventually happened, and perhaps some advice on anyone else that may find themselves in the same situation, how to get themselves out of that so they can follow along and have the same success that the case study did. If you're going to do a case study for that, put a lot of effort into it, because somebody who is going to be reading a case study is probably along the buyer's journey into, they have decided to trust your company, and they're digging deeper to see, okay, I like what these guys have to say. Where's some proof that they can do what we need them to do for other companies? So the more well-written your case study is, the more powerful it can be. So of all the pieces of content, do not skimp on the information in those case studies. So those are 5 of the most possible blog posts to go viral. There we go.
All right, Ian, Paul, you guys have any thoughts on that? Nope. All right.
No, it's good.
No, I agree. I mean, there again, several of the things that Jen kind of summarized there really are just examples of things that we had talked about before, like a curated post can turn into either a great resource type article or a listicle, so what she said there, I think, just provides, more reinforcement. So Ian, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, we talked about analytics. And I know one of the things that we said in analytics is if your blog posts are tending to get the most traffic to your website, when you're looking at most visited pages, that maybe you're missing some opportunities, which got me to thinking, and I wanted to ask your question because I know you always like to get into talking about calls to action. And that is, how important is it to include a call to action in a blog post? And if you think it's important, I'd love to know, what are your recommendations on how do you best accomplish that?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, Ken. And you're right. I do. I love calls to action because that's why you're a business. You want people to pick up the phone. You want people to take action. You want to be chosen as the preferred vendor, supplier, medical practitioner, whatever it is. So I suggest yes. In fact, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes is that people don't put a call to action. So you give great content, you've shared your knowledge with people, you've helped them. Why wouldn't you simply, it's like a salesperson sitting in a sales meeting and never asking for the sale, right? Even, as a business owner, as a business person, you need to make sure that you're asking for something. And I want to be super clear here that, using the dating marriage analogy that we've used so often, that a lot of marketers use, because it's so dead on, is that you don't want to ask for marriage on your first date, right? So you want to be very careful about the call to action that you're asking for. And what your goal often is to ask for a micro yes. You're trying to get somebody to make a micro decision that gets them to move a step closer to you. So I'll give some examples, but in the very least, for our clients, where we've evolved from is that we always included some sort of relevant call to action within the copy, and we still do this in the last paragraph. So you've talked about a topic. I was sharing about dental implants earlier for dental clients, and so say we're doing a blog post for a client about dental implants. at the very end, we want to invite that reader into, schedule your free dental implant consultation, because that's the gold standard call to action for us in that particular business. We want them to pick up the phone or book an appointment online. But there's also these secondary, more micro decisions we want them to make. And so where we've evolved is that, and part of it's because the tools we use have evolved. So what I mean by that is when we build out websites, we use kind of a tech stack platform that at its base, it uses something called Thrive Themes. It's just the theme structure and page builder that we've found to be so powerful for our clients and for connecting with their audience. And one of the key features in there is that we can build out calls to action in kind of their own section. I won't go into like what they're called in the details, but we can basically create this portfolio of calls to actions. We can attach a category to them so that when a blog post is talking about a particular topic, we categorize that blog post and it pulls in the call to action that's most relevant to that topic. And so that's really important, because you don't want you don't want to have a call to action that doesn't align with what people are looking at and reading about. So, for me, we have lots of blog posts about SEO. SEO is a topic that, our listeners have probably caught on that, man, some of these guys are really passionate about SEO. But we're passionate about the results it can create for your business. That's why we're passionate about it. But so imagine I wrote a blog post about local SEO for dentists or something like that. On that page, I've created a call to action that will get pulled in because of that topic. That's going to pull in, you get your free SEO report card for your dental practice, and it will automatically pull that in. People can click on that. And that to me is kind of a first step, secondary call to action for people if they're not ready to actually jump on a call with me and book a discovery meeting. So you need to have, at the very least, do these simple calls to action, which are built into the text. But if you have a great web developer or marketing agency that's managing your website, or you want one, talk to one of us on this call, on this webinar, on this podcast. My brain's a little
there you go.
Speaking of dental, I had a dental procedure the other day, and I'm on some good medication right now. So anyways, but yeah, include calls to action, start simple. But if you have a great agency, they can really help you, build these much stronger secondary calls to action into the mix as well.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Paul, we've talked a little bit about this, and Ian mentioned, probably one of the most used words that we use on this podcast, and that's SEO. How do you bake in SEO into a blog post? Do you have any recommendations on best practices?
I messed you all up with all my variations of what we're doing here today.
I know. It's like, what are we doing?
You just termed a new term, blogcasting.
We're doing blog. Yeah, we launched the first, what is it? Blogcast? Yeah.
Blogcast. You've heard it here, folks.
First ever blogcast.
So yes, blogcast. Okay. It starts with keyword research, and don't keyword stuff. I'm just going to say that. You still see that.
What does that mean?
Means just sticking your keyword in there, whether it's in context or not, and just having whatever keyword you want to rank for, just putting it in there, and it doesn't flow naturally, and goes back to trying to write for search engines and not people, and search engines have gotten smarter. That used to work a long time ago, but it doesn't work now, and it can actually get you penalized.
Okay.
But it starts with keyword research, and pick a keyword or two related keywords. Don't try to cover 10,000 things in the same blog post, and use, they're called semantically related keywords, which is, it's basically a different way to say the same thing. Do some research on that. And can you start talking about structure and scannability? And I was going to address that a little bit, because to me, this is one of those things that covers both SEO and writing for people, because they do scan, because search engines love long content, but people have short attention spans. They're probably not going to read a 3,000 word post, but they will scan through it, and they'll find a part of that they like. So it serves the SEO purpose of search engines liking long content, and it serves the purpose of people being able to quickly scan it and find what they're looking for. And then that goes into your headings. Use your headings. Headings help people understand what this section of the post is about, but it helps Google understand what it's about and how this section relates to this section. And you have to build that cohesiveness within a blog post, and search engines like that. Use bullet points, use numbered lists. If you want to rank for a featured snippet, again, you're going to have a long blog post usually, but list type of posts do tend to get most of the featured snippets, and Google will pull that out. And featured snippet, you've probably seen it. It's where you see the top search result, and it has part of the actual blog post in there. Okay, that's featured snippet. There's a bunch of different kinds. Won't go into it too much, but use alt text in your images. That's something we see a lot. People don't use alt text in their images. Use keywords in your meta description. That's another one you see is missed a lot. And internal linking. As you're planning out your blog posts, think about what other posts and pages are on your website and how you can link from this to that, and from another page or post back to that post. Because we see this a lot. It happens to us. That part kind of gets missed, and then you're trying to do some on-page SEO, and you're like, okay, this really is relevant to this other post, but there's nothing in here. There's no way in here to naturally link over. So you have to add some verbiage or maybe do a quick rewrite so you can naturally have that link. And your internal links have to be relevant. If you're writing a blog post about how water heater replacement, you probably don't want to link to a post about a broken pipe. Okay, they just don't. It's two different things. And one other thing that I want to mention is, and a lot of our clients kind of freak out about this, they have in the past, is external linking out to authority sites. Well, you kind of have to do that, especially if you're a newer site, a newer business, and you don't have a lot of authority. Linking out to these high authority sites helps Google say, okay, you linked out to this authority site and they're basically saying the same thing you are. It helps build the credibility. And I'm not saying you should link to a competitor. Okay, I'm not saying you link to a competitor 2 blocks away, but whatever you're writing a blog post about, if there's a high authority site out there, then link to it. And even if it's another local business that has good domain authority, and when I say, I don't mean local in your area, I mean, let's say you're a plumber and you're a plumber in Iowa and there's a plumbing company in Nevada that has a really good blog post. Someone from Nevada isn't going to drive, 600 miles to do something. So don't be afraid to link to it.
600 miles.
Well, it was just an example,
Yeah, no, those are all great tips. And for God's sake, if you're having somebody write blog posts on behalf of your business, read them. Make sure that they're well put together. Make sure that it doesn't represent your business in a bad way. And don't have content that is irrelevant to your website that could inadvertently be controversial. We see that a lot too, because people get this content from, these large content producers. They slap it together. It's largely duplicate content. They're filling, they're checking a box. They're putting the content on a site because, somebody said, I want 2 blog posts a month, or that's what they promised. And so they're just going through the motions. They're not doing anything to help you. As a matter of fact, it could hurt you. So if you're a business, please look at the blog posts and make sure that they align with what you do as a business. So I asked Jen because you can do all this stuff, right. You can write a great blog post, but you might not get the traffic and the benefits that you might initially expect. So I asked Jen to kind of share some ideas on how do you best promote a blog post or an article. And here's what she had to say.
The next question was about how to promote a blog article. Now, the thing is, just because you post a blog on your website doesn't mean that people are going to come to that website and read your blog. You do have to promote it. And some of the ways to promote it are in your company newsletter, on social media. You can actually highlight some authors and have it posted on their LinkedIn as an article. And I would suggest that you promote your blogs more than once, and you put them, we like to call it on rotation. So what that would mean is, now, before I go into that, your blog in this kind of situation would have to be evergreen. It would have to be not specific to a time of year, not specific to an event that is, has a start date and an end date. This would be for evergreen content, evergreen blogs, meaning that what was written will be applicable today, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now. Of course, things can be updated, but what you really want to be able to do is write a blog on a topic and have it be helpful and promoted out over the case of several weeks or several months. Some of the ways to do that are to take different snippets of the blog and put that out on social media. You could also have the image that you have as your hero blog image, and then do several variations of that. So as people see the blog out on social media, repeatedly, it doesn't always look like it's the same blog. So you can spice it up with some different visuals. In a blog, you're looking at 750 words or more. There are dozens and dozens of great sentences there that can be pulled out as snippets to promote. Keep in mind that while you may understand that your blog is on your website and we put it on social media and then we put it out on the newsletter and then like we have it at the link in our email signature, let's just say, some of the pushback we get often is that the client feels like, oh, well, we've seen this blog so much. Well, of course you have. It's yours. It's your company. Either you wrote it or you're very aware that we are promoting it. But your customers and your potential customers are not spending, 24/7 waiting for new content from your company, as sad as that is. And now I say that kind of, in a flippant manner, but quite seriously, sometimes the pushback we get are from internal staff saying, oh, we're promoting this too much. Well, you are not the buyer of your company's product or service. So what's really important to understand is you got to promote more than you think you have to promote in order to have your potential customer say, oh yeah, I saw that once. So the amount of effort that it takes, you may feel that it really is on repeat, but I would encourage you to, follow the process and really do a lot of work into promoting and getting as much mileage as possible out of your content. So to recap, some ways to promote your blog, obviously keep it on the website, use the social media channels, use your newsletter, and then also what we often do is we do something called the executive profile raising. We have a program around this. In a nutshell, the person who wrote the blog, we put that on LinkedIn as their article as well. So not only is it just them sharing a post, but they have that article, so the very same blog that was on your website is now an article attached to their profile. So when anybody is going to look at their profile, these articles show up as articles that they have written, and it really can help promote their expertise in their industry, their expertise in your company, and that can be really great for career progression. And we found it especially wonderful for customer service, account managers, and salespeople. And what's so important about that is that your potential customer or the customer that you just had the sales presentation with can go to LinkedIn and see that, you know, your sales team, your account management team are actually really well versed in solving some of the problems in the industry, and they do have their own opinions, and they are actively contributing to the knowledge out there. So it can be a really great thing to help raise the profile of your employees and also raise the profile of your company on that as well.
Yeah, I love that answer. Ian, I think you do something similar to what, you know, Paul and I do here at ChangeScape, and that is to build out like a 12-month social media campaign, or to harvest content out of a blog to turn that into social media, so that we can get traffic from social media sites back onto the website. Because at the end of the day, you're completely at mercy of what's going to happen on a third-party property, whether it's Google Business Profile, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. You really want to try to get people back onto your website. And Jen's exactly right. We get this pushback a lot from clients too. It's like, you're over promoting this. You know, I don't need X number of posts per day. Yeah, you do. Because social media is a river. You know, it's an ever moving stream of information. And if you want to give yourself the maximum opportunity to be found, you've got to over promote on social media. And you probably, Jen didn't mention this, Ian, I'd love your thoughts on this, about, you know, maybe boosting a post to drive additional traffic, you know, to a blog post by paying for, you know, a small ad on Facebook or, you know, whatever channel makes sense.
Absolutely. 100%, Ken. Boost your, like, put a small amount of your budget each month to boosting your blog posts, because you'll get more eyeballs on it. It'll give you greater exposure. It'll, obviously, if you're attracting people to your website, it's going to help you for all the reasons that Paul mentioned earlier about dwell time and traffic, which again creates this positive spiraling up effect for your SEO ranking. So,
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
You know, one thing she kind of alluded to about the promotion part of it, and stop Googling your own business. Okay. And the reason I say, look, and we see this organically, we see it with ads. Google is a big data company. In some ways, they probably know more about you than you do, and they know you're probably not going to buy from yourself. So they are very good about not showing certain things to you, especially when it comes to ads. It's very common for your ad not to show up if you're Googling yourself from your own business. You know, Google has a pretty good idea where you are.
And in the very least, use an incognito tab, like, if you are going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good point. Ian, last question, but certainly not least, is we've got to talk about blog post titles. They're incredibly important. So what advice or recommendations do you have on how do you write good blog post titles?
Yeah. I mean, let me reinforce what you just said, Ken, about the importance of blog post titles first. Titles are vital for generating blog post traffic. The reason for that is because they are the first thing that people see in your Google search results for that blog post. They are also the first thing that people see when you share it socially. It's the first thing that people see when they land on the page. So you want people to not only, you want to attract people to your blog post, but you want them to actually read your blog post. And just like, you know, the compelling title of a book, when you're looking to read a book on a topic, like, I cannot overemphasize the importance of this, that it is a vital piece. It's like the gateway to your content, right? So make sure you put effort into it. There's actually a really great study that a company called Orbit Media did in relation to the number of drafts that companies do for headlines. Now, this was headlines, but it's still relevant for titles for a blog post. And it was interesting because they put them into these blocks of, what were the results of your blog post in Lyft by the number of drafts you did. So meaning you took more effort to create a really great headline or title, and it resulted in, by the time you chose the final one, that it drove up the results. So it was interesting because 4 to 6 drafts of a headline resulted in a 22% boost. 7 to 10 resulted in a 35% boost. 11 to 19 drafts. So again, just brainstorming, what am I going to call this thing? Boosted it by 46%. And then what I thought was really interesting was that after that, if you do 20 or more drafts, it actually falls back down to 28%, because you've spent, like, to me, if I were to read into this, I'd be like, it's kind of like what Jen was talking about, how a business itself is looking at it. Somebody used to term this gazing at your belly button, right? Like, if you're just sitting there looking at yourself as a business, and in this case, if you're spending way too much time on titles and headlines, like 20 plus drafts, then you're probably spending too much time, and the results will trail off. But you definitely want to put effort into it. So some tips I think these have kind of been fed out during this conversation, but you want to avoid spam type headlines. You want to avoid like clickbait type headlines that are like really, really super compelling, but then the article doesn't support it, right? You see this all the time, especially in social posts. You don't want to do that because ultimately that will hurt you. You want to create compelling headlines or titles that are going to catch the reader's attention and draw them into your blog article. And your title should align with the keyword you're trying to rank for. So you should include your keyword or key phrase in your title because that's a tremendous signal to Google. So not only will it help attract the right people that are searching for that key term, but it's a signal for Google. You can also use first person. So depending what your article is about, you can say, this is how I solved this challenging problem, right? Including numbers, like the 7 best ways to, to fix your car engine or something. I'm just throwing that in. But including numbers in your title can be very powerful because it represents a list. And Jen talked about the power of lists. You want the value to be super clear to the reader before they actually enter into your blog post. And then once they're there, you want to be clear about the value. Paul talked about being highly focused on your audience. If you can include your audience into this conversation, into this title, so that they see themselves like, oh, this article is about me and how to do this thing, or how to solve this problem that I'm experiencing. And so you can use that in order to help them put themselves in that position. So those things are really good do's. I did include a don't in there, but don't moving on to don'ts, don't be spammy. You don't want to have it come across as clickbait. You don't want to keyword stuff like Paul was talking about, because that's a red flag for Google. But just be thoughtful. Like what would be compelling to me if I were to put myself in my audience's shoes? What's going to be a compelling title to draw me in? And that's usually, once you include that. So thinking about the two audiences, the people and the bots, the Google bot, right? If you think about those two things, you're going to land on a good title, especially if you do a bunch of drafts to really come up with something that's compelling and punchy.
All right. So we're coming up close to the hour. And we've talked a lot about we've talked mainly, I think, about, the good things and how to do things the right way. We've talked about some of the mistakes that people make out there. Do you guys have any last thoughts on mistakes that you want to help people try to avoid?
Well, one thing I'd say, this is less about mistakes in blogging and more about website hygiene, if you will. It kind of ties in is websites and businesses evolve over time. And if you have content on your website that's no longer relevant, get rid of it, redirect it to something else. I mean, I guess that would be a mistake, getting rid of content and not redirecting it, because you don't want to generate 404 errors. But if you have content on your website about maybe a service that you no longer offer, remove it and redirect it to something else. That's one thing I would say.
All right.
Yeah, the two things I would say are, one, do it. Start creating blogs in this methodical way. And then the last thing just supports everything Paul said about SEO. If you're going to build great content, it has to get found. So you have to share it. You have to SEO optimize it, share it on social, SEO optimize it so it can get found on search engines. And then it'll help you a lot.
All right. I think with that, we're going to wrap up this blogcast. So I want to thank our audience for listening to the first ever blogcast of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses, I should say. It's a super important topic. I love talking about, content marketing in general, but blogging has always had a special appeal to me. I hope that you found this information useful. And Ian, what do you ask people to do at the end of every podcast?
Keep calm and market on, people.
All right. Thanks, everybody.